All right, let's rock and roll. So a few months ago, I want to say like it might have been even like 4 months now because it was last year. I think it was last year, maybe the beginning of this year. I put out like a flare of, who would be, who's in the industry, in the mortgage industry that might want to tell their story on the podcast. And you reached out and, you gave me some bullets on what your story was. And I'll tell you right after I put it out, I got a lot of feedback like me, I want to be on the podcast. And it was a mistake in a lot of ways because there's a lot of people that usually when I ask somebody to be on the podcast, it's because I know them or I've met them in some form or fashion. And immediately I'm like, I think I can get a story out of you because there's a chemistry there. And you gave me your story and I was like, I have to talk to this guy. So first off, thank you for driving down all the way from, Prescott to Gilbert, which is, several hours drive to be here. So thank you, man.
Well, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
Heck yeah.
I don't know if you remember this, but there was a time a few years ago where you called me.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that I really appreciated about the call was we all get calls all the time from different
Mm-hmm.
people who are, higher up at different companies. We all get the calls. But what I appreciate about you was you had done your homework on me, to be honest with you. Like you mentioned a little bit of my background. You had mentioned something to do with my daughters.
Mm-hmm.
And to be honest with you, like that's something that I do with anybody who I call. Like I care enough to know enough about you where I'm not just calling and talking about your numbers or whatever it may be. Hey, I care enough about you to get to know you as a person, to reach out. So I've always, I've never forgotten that you did that. You were probably the only person who ever has actually called me like that.
No, thanks, man. Well, so let's talk about that for a second, right? First off, let me introduce you. I'm here with Travis Smart.
Yeah.
And Travis is a top 1% loan officer in Prescott.
Mm-hmm.
So I know you have all like Northern Arizona business and you probably do business in Southern Arizona as well. But, what a remarkable story you have, which we're going to jump into. But it's, one of the things for me that I love to do is get remarkable people on the podcast that have a breakthrough story, that have gone through a lot of pain to get where they are. And it's not necessarily about the success because you're here because of that, right? You're here, you're top 1% in the country. That's not easy to do, even in probably the worst markets that we've been in. But it's not about that. It's about the moments before then that you've had to struggle. And, when I talk to people, a lot of times there's like a single mountain of struggle that they had to get through. And for you, it was like mountains. It was like so many things that you've had to go through to get to where you are today that I can't wait to jump into. But let's talk about prospecting for a second, because I think this is where I think recruiters in our industry are terrible and give us a bad name, right? So you and I met because several years ago, I picked up the phone and cold called you.
Mm-hmm.
And it's what I do. Right. I manage a region for Loan Depot, but when, one of my biggest goals is you have to grow the business in the markets you're in. Yeah. And that requires me to go out into the markets and meet people. And that requires me to cold call someone, and I'm not sitting in your market in Prescott. So I've always wanted to be in Prescott. So I picked up the phone and reached out. But what I knew was who my competition is to get your attention. Yeah. I know that as a loan officer, let me ask you about this. What's your experience as a loan officer with the number of calls you get in a week from recruiters?
Honestly, it's amazing. I swear to goodness, there's like some sort of like alarm that every recruiter is on where it'll be like sitting there one day, 11 o'clock hits, 8 of them within 10 minutes.
Yeah. Well,
like, you know what I'm
crazy,
saying? Like, it's like amazing.
Yeah.
It's like somebody put out like a manual. Hey, this is the time that you do the cold calls. And it's always interesting because obviously I don't ever save the number. Right. And so hey, we're amazing because we answer our phone, right? Yeah. Like, isn't that great? And someone will be like, yeah, we talked a couple of years ago and you said that, right now wasn't the time. And I'm like, I don't remember anything to do with like, I don't even, I swear this is the first time I've ever heard of your company, but apparently not, know, and it's always, to be honest with you, like it usually starts with, hey, looked at your numbers. I swear to goodness, almost every time. And I not to toot my own horn, I do a lot of government loans, And they'll always be like, I see you do a lot of government loans.
Yeah. So for people who aren't in the industry and listening to the podcast, government loans are loans that are backed and insured by the government, and they're usually positioned, and the spirit of the program is the guidelines and the credit box is more laxed to help more people get into homes, and it's predominantly geared towards veterans or first-time home buyers who are looking to get into their first home. And the margins on those loans, what the company gets paid for those loans is considerably higher than any other loan. Yeah. And so companies are looking to hire people in that range. So what they're essentially saying is, we're going to make a lot of money from you, and we want to hire you.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Which is what you hear essentially when they say that, right?
Yeah. That is exactly what I hear. I'm like, and my knee-jerk reaction is I'm more than that as a person, right? Like right away. Yeah. Like first thought is I imagine that it's like, I was like, it's the only time that I get to feel like a pretty girl. I'm more than just my pretty face, right? Like I was like, oh man. But I think it's just there's ways to go about it that is respectful and disrespectful. And I think about a lot how do I attract referral partners? How do I prospect? I would never call somebody that I hope to work with and say, you've done so many deals. Yeah. We should work together. Like, you know what I mean? Yes. Like, okay, at least, if that is your motive, at least don't just, wear a t-shirt that says, hey, I just want to, I see you as a cash cow or something of that. Like, that's just not the way that things should be done. Agreed. And what I liked about the way you called was honestly, I literally to this day, if I'm going to call somebody, I'm going to look them up on Facebook. I'm going to know about them as people just to even see, hey, maybe someone's not going to be a good connection for me to work with. Maybe, over time you start to realize, hey, this person and I are not going to be a good fit. That person and I are not going to be a good fit. That person's not going to give me the time of day. That person's going to let me take them to coffee about 15 million times. And, we're going to build a great relationship and we can become friends. But that's more of a friendship than, hey, during the work week, I'm going to meet with you. You know what I mean?
Without a doubt.
Absolutely.
I mean, so let's, man, you keep opening up really good doors for me. But, I think here's where people fail. Somebody reached out to me the other day and they said, hey, we got an opportunity. We're looking to build in your market. And it's usually what they're wanting to do. It's always, here's what I want to do, right? And so then I said, well, what is the position? Because I was curious to hear how they were going to respond. And they were like, well, any leadership position. So they were like, so broad. And I said, okay, why are you reaching out to me? And like, it took a long time for them to respond. So then they came back and said, I just researched all of your information on your LinkedIn. They hit me up on LinkedIn. So they sent the message before looking at my history. And the reason I say that is because we have so much data at our fingertips, right? And what people are missing is that there's two pieces of data that you could find. The normal general loan officer is looking at a list in MMI or whatever you call it, that you can see data on realtors or loan officers. And you're saying, okay, you fit me. You fit what I need, right? Yeah. And so what I'm looking at, and this has evolved over time, but what I'm looking at as somebody who's looking to partner with somebody is I'm looking at what someone's posting and how they're interacting with their post. And do they have a family? I'll look at how many kids they have, like what can I back into to understand this individual and where can I connect with them? Because if I can't connect with them on any level, then there's no reason for me to call them. I don't have an interest in calling them. It's the same with the podcast. Unless I feel like there's a story, it doesn't make sense for me to have them on the podcast yet, right? Until there is a story. And for you, the thing of it is that I had to have seen, for me to pick up the phone, that interest level, that piece, and then I was going to approach it from there. And a lot of times I'll just be honest, like, hey man, I could even say I was looking at your numbers, but then I researched you and I see that you have a family, you have beautiful kids, you have a daughter, and I have a daughter about the same age. Like, man, it'd be really cool to get to know you and hear what's been going on in your world. It's a very different, lands very different than if I just led with, you do a lot of government loans, man. Like, that's pretty cool. Like, I can make a lot of money off of you. Right. So, but I don't know if you guys caught this. Loan officers in the business that are good loan officers are getting hammered. I mean, he said, I'll get 8 calls in 10 minutes. And so when you're prospecting, whichever kind of business you're in to prospect, know that the person you're calling is probably getting hit that many times. How do you sound different? Mm-hmm. How do you approach it differently? Because everybody is going to do it the same. Yeah. You got to figure out a way to break through that white noise. So I love that, man. I love that, from a cold call ensued you and I talking in DMs, cheering each other on stuff that you'd post something, I'll cheer you on. I post something, you cheer me on. And we just continued to have a good conversation until, now we're here sitting next to each other from DMs. And that's how it should happen.
Absolutely.
That's the way business is happening these days. And so thank you so much, man, for coming out here.
Well, I appreciate it very much. Definitely. And, no, you're doing it. Your personality and the way that you care about your people definitely shows through. I will say.
Thank you, man. Yeah. And that's hopefully what I'm trying to do is trying to demonstrate. And I think that's where a lot of people are missing it is you gotta, if you're in the business, if you're in any industry, you have to figure out ways to demonstrate to your potential client or your target audience how you're different from what they're, experiencing today. If you're a realtor, how are you showing up differently than other realtors, right? So I just don't see a lot of that. What I do see is somebody holding a key in front of a house with a client that's like a trophy of, deer hunters, they love the points,
Yeah.
It's like, it's kind of like that, right? It's like the deer hunter, right? So it's more around, I accomplish something and they're the hero versus making the client the hero.
Yes.
And I think that's what I'm trying to display is that the hero isn't me. The hero is the people that are out there doing the hard work. And Absolutely. So, man, but you, first off, before we even jump into this, I want to thank you for your service.
Of course.
I get to live my life the way I get to live it because of people like you. And I can't thank you enough for being, have served in a very difficult, way. And so thank you for that.
Oh, no, it's a privilege, man. It was a privilege. And, I gained a lot out of it for sure. So you want to dive in a little bit?
Yeah, man. Well, dive is a good word because you were a rescue swimmer. But let me position this real quickly. So the podcast is called Breakthrough, and the reason that I call it Breakthrough is because there's these breakthrough moments in life. And so if you think through the 212-degree moment when water boils, it's at 212. Mm-hmm. But right before water boils, there is just these bubbles that are kind of formulating at 211. But it doesn't happen until 212. And to me, that's the breakthrough moment. I want to talk about the moments before you broke through. Before you were top 1%, mm-hmm. there were times in your life that you probably had to think it was game over, or how are you going to get through it, or maybe not. But right now, there's a listener.
Yeah.
Who is in that space before they broke, that need to know kind of some of the struggle that you've been through in order to get to the place where you are today and the mindset shift that you had to go through.
Yeah.
So when I talk about it, what comes to mind for you of the struggles that you've been through? Like, which is the biggest one that you see, like back against a wall? Am I going to get through this? What was that?
There's so many, to be honest with you. I'll go through a few kind of in order.
Let's talk about it.
I grew up in Phoenix, actually, and my mother struggled with addiction and dependency on prescription medication. So back in the day, it wasn't recognized as a bad drug addiction. It was more so, hey, you're sick, hey, you're hurt, you're taking medication, and that's the justification. And as a kid, that was my justification, right? Hey, my mom's passed out on the couch. Well, she has a hurt back. Hey, my mom's passed out here. Well, she has a hurt back. Oh, my mom's in the hospital. Well, she's sick and has lupus, right? Like, it's like these different things that even as a kid, that's the way I justified it. And it was interesting because I grew up with like that. And when I was about 14, the fire department showed up in my house, and my mom was passed out. and they picked her up. And I thought, I grew up with my mom going in and out of the hospital a lot because she did have lupus as well. And so I didn't think about, anything really. Like literally ICU stood for like, I'll see you later, right? Like it didn't even faze me is how little like, ICU or anything like that fazed me. Well, about a week into her being gone, I think she's just I hate to say it, but I'm saying just in the hospital, right? Because I was so accustomed to it. Well, no, it turns out that she was in a rehab in Chandler called Chandler Valley Hope. And I don't know if they're still around or not. And when I was 14 years old, after growing up like that, that's when I realized that my mother was an addict. I did not realize that my mother was an addict, and that the way that I had grown up was not because she was just sick or she had she had broken her back before. It was, well, she's choosing to do this.
So there was this, there's almost like a moment of clarity that happens, almost like an end of innocence at that moment, because you've always like, you have these moments of justification, if you will, is the way you describe it. But then all of a sudden it comes into clarity. Well, how did you feel about that? Was there like were you upset about it? Like, okay, all this time that I've been giving you outs, how did you feel about that as a 14-year-old?
Honestly, I was so angry, man. My mother was somebody who, if it wasn't perfection, it wasn't good enough to her. Like as her kid.
For you.
For me as her kid.
But for her,
yeah,
she let herself off the hook for everything.
Absolutely.
And for you, you just had to walk in a so that's when do you remember the buildup happening? Like, was it right at 14? Did it all happen immediately, or was it over time that you just started bubbling of getting anger?
She was in the rehab facility for 2 months, and it was throughout that time because I knew how
important in it.
Yeah, like I knew how important my grades were to my mother. Like being in my house growing up stood for better work, you're done, but harder to get an A. Like that's how like things were with her.
Wow.
And so when she was in there, subconsciously, I think I wanted to like punish her, to be honest with you. So I told her I was failing all my classes. I was like, I'm failing, right? Because what are you going to do about it? Like,
it's
hey,
a crazy cry for help. But like, it's a really insane cry for help that it's like, I'm getting your attention one way or another. Like you're going to suffer while you're another way you've made me suffer, right?
And the funny thing is, so I got my report card a week after I said that to her, and I had straight A's. You couldn't even try to get it. Well, and I think it was like a message I wanted to like send to her, and I hate to say it like in this way, but it was like, I don't need you. It's okay. You could do this, and you could be doing this, and you could be here, but I'm still gonna make it. I'm still gonna do well.
Real quickly, how old are your kids again?
12. Well, my oldest is 11. Then I have a 5, a 4, and a 2.
So you're 11-year-old. You think about the mindset of your 11-year-old, and think about the mindset of you at 11.
Yeah.
Can you imagine your 11-year-old dealing with what you did?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Yeah.
And it was like having grown up with her being sick, I had to grow up very quick. I had to take care of her. I have a brother who's a decent amount younger than me who I would help with a lot. And so I had a lot of maturity very quickly. And, from there, obviously she did get out of rehab, right? And what I did was I would attend AA meetings with her. Like as a kid, I was like from 14 on, I attended AA meetings with her, and it wasn't necessarily like because I wanted to. I was like, well, my dad was angry with her, right? So he didn't go. He didn't want to support her in that.
Were they still together?
They were still together, man.
So real quickly, what was the dynamic with you and your father while she was gone? Was he bleeding into you his frustrations with her as well? Like, or was he taking the high road and not talking about it? Like, what did that look like for you?
I think in some ways, I was her face in a lot of ways to him because I always stood up for her in their arguments. Like I grew up, like they would argue a lot, and I would be her protector. I would stand up. Yeah, and that was something that I always did. And obviously he has his anger. There's a lot of things that were going on behind the scenes. I mean, when someone is struggling with addiction, usually there's money things going on. Back then it wasn't as simple as going on your phone and looking at the app and seeing what your balance was. I mean, I literally grew up like my mom would have us watching the mailman to hide the mail from my dad so he didn't see the bills, which, you know what I mean? Like putting us in that position where in his mind, I'm deceiving him the way my mother did, right?
Yeah, but you're learning early on how to deceive, right? How to hide things, I mean, that's all these things come up later.
Oh, and it created my relationship. Look at my, my relationship with money, right?
Yes.
Like, oh man, it's a bad thing. It's a horrible thing. It's a thing that causes friction, right? But, from there, I would go to the AA meetings, which there's a few things from it, and I'll get into that a little bit later that I still appreciate about going to those meetings. So continuing on, my mom had been sober for a little over a year and a half, and there was one night. It was December 28th, 2007. I was a sophomore in high school at this time, and she knocks on my door, my bedroom door, and that evening, she kind of seemed off, man. Like she really seemed like she had like relapse. She reminded me so much of how she used to be, right? Like
you knew the signs.
Oh, absolutely.
Like a voice inflection or the way they breathed, everything. Just you knew it.
Oh, I thought
a codependent. Individual
it was like
sensed it immediately.
Well, and I had that feeling, and so she knocked on my door, and she opened her arms for a hug, right? And I'm, transparent. I slammed that door right in her face as quick. Wow. I mean, it was the way I remember. I'll never forget this moment because it's one of those moments in life that, you wish you could take back. I mean, I'm going to get into why, but I wish I could take that moment back. But the reason being is the next day, it was early in the morning, and my mother was not being very responsive in the morning, and she was struggling. And my dad took her to the hospital. Still, I see you later, right? Yep. I'll see you later. That's why I see you stood for to me. Well, that's about 6:30 in the morning. Well, 10 a.m. comes, and my dad calls the house phone because, of course, that's what we had. And he says, "You guys have to get over here. It's not good." And I was like, well, this is different. This has never happened before. So we go in to it was Scottsdale Memorial North, right off of like 90th Street and Shea here.
Yeah, I know.
And she was on life support already. Never gained consciousness, and passed away New Year's Day, 2008.
Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, man.
Well, and it was one of those things where I think when like loss is horrible, but I think that when you go through it, you just think about, I hate to say it, but like you can't feel it immediately. Does that make sense? So you almost can't, like, especially when it's like out of nowhere like that, you can't like feel it immediately. You more so like think about how it's going to be. How is your life going to be? And then you go through these different motions. But the other thing too is I'm a sophomore in high school. So she passed away New Year's Day. A few days later was her funeral. And 3 days after that, I'm back at school, and,
was that because you chose to, or because your father made you, or what was it about? What was it? I mean, because I feel like, grieving is a weird, is a weird, tough hole that you either go into immediately or you have to deal with it later. And what was it for you?
My dad was not the most emotionally available person ever. Like he was I hate to give him an out, but I will. Born and raised on a farm in South Dakota. I mean, he was not treated well.
Isn't it weird how different we are as fathers than the way our fathers were with us?
Absolutely.
My dad was a great dad, but the relationship I have with my children is not anywhere in the planet where my relationship with them. I mean, they tell me everything. I told my dad nothing, So, but I mean, was he in the military?
No.
Okay.
No, it was just
he grew up on a farm.
Regimented at like 4 or 5 years old, having to go out there and work on the farm at like 4 a.m. every day, getting beaten by his dad or stepdad. And so in his mind, and I as you get older, right, like you start and you become a parent, you start understanding and kind of like having more compassion and empathy for your parents. But in his mind, hey, did he make me go work out on the farm at 4 or 5 in the morning? No. Did he beat this, crud out of me? Sorry, crud out of me as, the way he was? No. In his mind, is he doing a good job? Absolutely. And in comparison, the truth is he was, right? I got to give him that kind of credit. Was he what I wish he was or what I think I needed at that time? No. As far as emotions, it was like my dad literally packed up all of my mother's things and belongings within 24 hours of her passing out of nowhere. Like it was gone so quickly. Like it was like, I'm like, I think for him, it was very, I'm not trying to be rude to him or disrespectful of him, but he was so angry about so many things. He's obviously now older, right? Hey, she had her addiction issues for a lot of years. She had done a lot of things with his finances, and then she went and passed away, and he's angry. I'm going to get rid of, I think in his mind it was, I'm going to get rid of your memory. I'm going to get rid of everything.
Yeah. And it's also a way for him to cope with getting on with his life. And in a way, if he had been in a hole, but like whatever it is, you still had an effect on you to the extent that it still sticks with you today. It's like, so your way to cope was, well, I'm watching this all happening. I got to get back on a horse fast. I got to get back to life fast.
Yep. And actually it was like the lesson that I got to learn in that was, the world doesn't stop because you're going through a really hard time. The world keeps going, we all have different hard times, and it just, as much as you wish you could just live, I hate to say live in it, but live in it, hey, I'm going through something horrible. Why is the world still moving? Why is, hey, it's like this is a huge thing in my life, but to everybody else is like, it's like nothing happened. Right. And it was hard, man. It was, I went back to high school. I mean, literally the first day back, I'll never forget this either. Like my English teacher had an assignment for us. It was write an essay over what happened over winter break. And I pulled her to the side and said, hey, my mom passed away. I'm not writing this essay, I mean, and, really sweet. She had no idea. She wrote me a nice card. Apologize. I've never forgotten that either. I remember all the kindness that people kind of give to me, but it was just that thing. And I immediately felt different than other people. I felt like, I
didn't lose my mom or my father or anything, but it's almost like the way that I would imagine it to be is all of a sudden, every time somebody says something about their mom, which you never hear or think about until then.
Yeah.
Because now it's like, I have that missing. And did you go through that process? Like
I did. I did. And at that point, I mean, like you talked about with the grieving process, I mean, it's a lot of different phases. And if it is like someone really close to you, like, I feel like there's just so many like different phases. Like, I think at first it's, I can only speak for myself, but it's like glorifying, right? Like I glorified her for a while. Like it was, oh wow, she was somebody, she didn't deserve that and all these things. But I think the other thing too was like, I was not a popular kid at all. Did not have, like, a lot of kids picked on me. I was a kid who wore like band t-shirts and like had weird looking hair. And then these people who didn't treat me well started feeling bad for me. And that sucked, man. Like you
didn't appreciate the pity, if you will. You didn't want to be pitied. You didn't want any attention on you either. I would imagine. Okay.
No, absolutely. And I don't feel like when people are fake, like even back then, like I did not feel comfortable with it. Hey, continue being who you are towards me, or, whatever it is, that's fine. But it was just this, I don't want to be looked at as weak. I mean,
high school's hard already as it is, man. It was. Yeah. So, so then, you were telling me the story about you ended up getting kicked out of your house not long after that.
Absolutely.
So how did that lead to what led to that?
So I did a lot of things for my brother, and I always I would take my brother out on the weekend. I was in high school. I wanted, because I turned like 16. My brother was 8. My brother was substantially younger than me. So I would take him out, and I always wanted to be a good influence for him. And my dad and I still didn't see eye to eye. And there was one morning, and my dad had said my brother had left the home phone off the charger. The home phone's dead. My dad's upset. He goes to my brother, hey, did you leave the home phone off the charger? And my brother goes, no, Travis did, which I don't recall if I did or not. I probably did. But my dad goes, says something about really negative about me. Says I'm a piece of crap, da da da. And he didn't know that I heard him, but I heard him. I got out of bed immediately and I said, hey, I don't care what you think about me, but don't be putting those kind of thoughts in his head, is what I said. And that started a physical altercation at that point that led to me
fist,
out.
Like
Yep.
you the blows with your dad?
Oh, for sure.
How will that?
Well, he hit me. He hit me first, man.
Yeah, but you say this in such a accepting understanding of the world around you, but it's unheard of in a lot of, it's unheard of in a lot of ways. So not to that, and I'm not judging by any man, but it's how it's context to how people, listening need to understand. So you go to blows with your dad, fist fight.
Yeah.
And all this anger that you have, because a lot of ways it's misdirected too, and maybe but you're an angry kid at this point.
I absolutely was.
So how did what happened after that?
Oh, you said you're out of here. You're not living here anymore.
Where'd you go?
My sister lived in a condo in Chandler, and I got to sleep on her couch for a while. And I'm young, man. I'm like, okay, what am I going to do? Well, I'm 17. And
you have a job at this point?
I do. I was actually delivering food at a Greek restaurant.
Okay, good.
In Tempe. And it was like my hours were like from 6 p.m. to 3 a.m. actually, because hey, it's college campus.
Yes.
And so
actually sounds like a cool job.
It was.
If you're an ASU, that sounds like a cool job.
It was a very cool job, man. It was a very cool job. I mean, I'm not trying not to be perverted. 17-year-old delivering food into strip clubs around. I'm like, dude, this is cool, man. I hope they don't card me, but they did inside the food. Yes. It was pretty cool. And so I'm like, what am I going to do? Right. I mean, honestly, dude, okay, I'm in high school. I'm delivering food. I used to care so much about school. And my grades used to be so important because they were important to my mother, but they're, obviously that kind of lapses a little bit. And what am I going to do? And so I start looking into different things. And one of the,
while you're living sorry to interrupt, but while you're living on a couch.
Yeah.
In your sister's house, are you still going to high school?
I am.
Okay. So you're making the drive all around. You're going to high school to Tempe.
Yep.
So you're all over the place. So you're somewhat busy. I mean, and trying to figure this out.
Absolutely.
Okay, keep going. Sorry.
And I'm 17 years old, and I'm like, well, what am I going to do? And I started looking into different things with the military because, things are going on back then. That was 2008, 2009 timeframe, obviously, and there's a lot of things going on.
It's a recession as well. We're in a recession at that time.
And I was very aware of that. My dad actually worked in construction, and so it was like, okay, well, there's no jobs right now, really. There's what am I going to do? Go to college and have a crud ton of student loans, and I don't even know what I want to be. And I'm still angry. In a lot of ways, I'm an angry, guy. I've just gone through all these things. I mean, I hate to say it, but hey, I was at my own pity party at one, quite honestly. Hey, you can't pity me, but I'll pity myself all day, And I look into different things, and as silly as it sounds, the movie The Guardian with Ashton Kutcher, and he was a rescue swimmer, and I look back and I can do a lot of reflection. I've gone through, I go to a lot of therapy. I'm a huge dude, love therapy. Yeah. Thank goodness for that. But back then it was, I want to make it so no one else has to feel the way that I feel, which was my mom passing away, me going through all these different things. If I can make that difference for somebody, it's all worth it.
Well, in a lot of ways, that's why you're here today. Mm-hmm. I mean, somebody listening needs to hear this story because they may have lost somebody. They may be angry. All these things. And here you are, somebody who's been through it all, but figured out a way to get out of it. And, at some point, something inspired you to find the path to the military. Yeah. And so was it the movie that literally lit the fly? Maybe I can do that.
I think there was a mixture of, I wanted to save a life. I wanted to make that difference for somebody. And the motto of rescue swimmers is so others may live. And to be honest with you, I was very depressed as well. And a part of me transparently didn't want to live. I mean, transparently, hey, I don't want to harm myself. I don't want to kill myself, but I want to live either. And how about I can die or not be here, but doing it, saving somebody else, right? Something valuable, something worthwhile, right?
Was that really your thought process? I will do something extremely dangerous in the hopes that I either can save somebody, right, and do some good in the world.
Yeah.
But if I sacrifice myself for that, it's all okay because
I'm so hurt and sad and all those things. Yeah.
Do you still feel like that today?
No, I mean, I think that we all have different, you know, like we all go through different things. I think that there's a lot that I work through to this day, kind of like what I shared before, where it was be better, you know, strive for better work. You're done. I think that the only time that my mother showed me love was when I was perfect, right? Mm-hmm. So that's the way that my mother was giving me love. But if I wasn't, I was not worthy of love anymore. So then you have that your own inner monologue.
Yeah, it's like conditional.
Yeah. Okay. Conditional. Well, I made a mistake. And now my family deserves better than me and all these things, right? Wow. That's kind of like that. Do
you have to talk yourself out of that?
Oh, absolutely.
Every time, like even to this day and as an adult.
Yeah.
And by the way, you have a long ways to go, but you're 33, right? And
32.
And 32. Mm-hmm. And you're so young still, but you know, it's remarkable that, you know, almost double your life, right? Like when all this started, now it's been double your life that you still have to talk your way through like these weird thoughts that are embedded in your head from when you were a kid. Like when you talk to yourself, like, you know, that voice in your head, that, is it the 14-year-old or you, who do you hear the most when you talk to yourself?
It's funny that you bring this up. There's this book called The Untethered Soul. Have you ever heard of that? No, it's actually a book that talks about essentially how the voice in your head is not you. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, it's like, hey, okay, you know, oh man, I'm not worthy of all these things because there's this voice in my head saying this, right?
It's the ego,
whether it's, you know, and I think that are there times where my natural or knee-jerk thing where I was kind of wired through my upbringing to have my mind work this way? Absolutely. You know, like, hey, I'm not going to make an excuse, but there is a part of me that could separate, hey, is that real or is that just the way that you've been wired? Oh, that's not real.
There you go. Exactly. Yeah, that's not real. That's just that voice. That's just, and if you can separate that, but I think it's powerful how you just said that. A lot of people don't realize that that's not real.
Yeah.
You know, like even like in our business, we do content. Everyone's afraid to do content because there's that voice in their head that's like, you're going to be judged. They're going to laugh at you. They're going to this, I don't like this, but that's not, you got to untether yourself as that book says, from, you know, those thoughts. And I think when you can do that, then true growth happens. But so I didn't mean to take you off track, but keep going. So you end up in the military as a rescue swimmer.
Yep. So it was very, very strenuous training pipeline for it. So like in boot camp, I was in the special operations division. I was with guys who had like SEAL contracts, SWCC contracts, diver, EOD, and then rescue swimmer. We're all in their divisions. And then we went on to our different schools. For me, I went to rescue swimmer school, obviously. And it was, dude, I was in the worst shape of everybody. I'm about 6'3". At that time, I'm 150 pounds soaking wet, dude. Like literally, like I got the minimums to get the contract and I had to work to get the minimums, like running a mile and a half in under 11 minutes. My first time was like 13.
Yeah.
Doing 2 pull-ups, at least back then it was 2 pull-ups. Couldn't do a single one. Like, so I had to like freaking work to even get the contract. So I'm getting all the minimums, right? And I'll never, like on the plane even to boot camp, dude, I see this guy who's jacked. I'm like, yeah, are you going to try to be a SEAL? He's like, I'm going to go try to be a rescue. So I'm like, oh crap, is this what they all look like? So going to the school, it's tough. They're, you know, it's very physically demanding. And we would do all sorts of different evolutions, right? Like, so there was a very high attrition rate. Like my class started with 35 people and at the end of it graduated 6 out of the 35. And it was just, to me, it was, hey, I know that I have to get lunch. I know I have to get dinner. I'm not going to look, start at the beginning, look at how much longer I have to go to the end. I'm going to just I know I'm going to get a meal coming up. I know lunch coming up at some point. So this suck is going to stop here for at least a little bit at lunch. Then, hey, so on and so forth. Just breaking it down and cutting it down, right? And making it smaller slices and slivers. Because when you look at everything from a big picture, it's overwhelming, right? So it was, hey, good chance I'm not good enough. Good chance they fail me. Good chance all these things. But that's not my decision to make. You know, I'm not going to quit.
That's it. That what you just said, that is not my decision to make. I'm not going to quit. I mean, well, everything you said, like even taking, you know, the entire process and saying, I just need to cut it down to chunks, accomplish small bits. Right. And if they're not going to, you know, accept me, that's on them. I'm going to try my hardest. A lot of people do not go by that. And it's my philosophy on everything. Like until somebody tells me not to show up, I am fighting every single day. And I love that you said that.
Well, and the people who quit to this day have to wonder if they were good enough.
Every day.
Did I have it? Did I have it in me?
And it's a large number, right? That are quitting.
Very, very, very big number. But so ended up going through that school, made it through, obviously, and then training pipeline. And then I got orders to Guam, and I'm about 20 years old. And I, at this point, I'm dating this lady for like 2 months. And then I get orders to Guam, which was the last place I wanted to get orders to. And, you know, hey, you know, it's the universe telling me I need to marry this woman, right? Yeah, so I can marry this woman, right? So she can come with me, so I'm not alone, because obviously the military is a very lonely place. Yeah. And then we find out very quickly that she's pregnant. And in Guam, my daughter was born when I was 20. And it was interesting because, like, I hate to say this, but I knew that I should not have married her very quickly after I married her, to be honest with you. Like, I knew that I had made a mistake. But there was so much pride and ego that I did not want to admit that I had made a mistake. I didn't want to feel embarrassed.
Yeah.
And
what a lonely place to be, because you're like, you know, was it embarrassment from your peers or embarrassment from her, or, you know, does she know that is she feeling the same way as you are? Or are you just kind of detaching? What's happening?
I was detaching, and honestly, I think it was because I had so many people, dude. Like, because obviously, like, you know, there's those who've gone before you who are like, dude, I did the same thing. I got divorced, man. Like, don't do it. Don't make a long-term decision on a short-term emotion, right? Don't do it. Well, I did, because I knew better, right? And you know the difference between a smart person and a wise person. Smart person learns from their own mistakes. A wise person learns from the mistakes of others. I wanted to be smart, you know, fitting last name. And my daughter, sure enough, very quickly she found out she's pregnant, and my daughter was born. And at this point, like, I'm literally like, you know, she was born a week before I turned 21. At 21 years old, I'm so like miserable in that kind of like relationship where I've literally already accepted that this is my life. I'm like, okay, as a man, I have to, you know, hey, I'm in the service. I gotta, you know, just suffer through this, and that's just, you know, what
embrace the suck.
Oh, absolutely. And and so it was funny. So it's not funny, but ended up, I was taking leave to actually work on our relationship. And the day I go to start my leave, she says, hey, I'm going to divorce you, and I'm done, and I'm going to go back to the States. Okay. And so Guam's an amazing place to get divorced. If someone's trying to get divorced, I'm sorry, but hey, less than 2 weeks, done, start to finish, boom, wham, bam. Thank you, ma'am. If you're trying to go through it and you're having to go through Maricopa County and waiting 3 years, go to Guam.
Was it, I saw this TikTok the other day where this guy's like, you know, I'm recording this for record, you know, and he has his wife in the background, and he's like, I want a divorce. And she's like, oh, wow, what should I do? You know, like, she's completely okay with the divorce, you know? So was it one of those where you were like completely okay with it, or were like a weight lifts off, or did all of a sudden you get this sense of, wait a minute, I don't know if I want to do this?
It was, I felt like I failed my daughter.
Yeah,
I failed my daughter, especially because I'm in the service, and I have this idea that I'm not going to be able to see her. I'm not going to have her. I'm not going to be a dad. I'm going to, you know, like, I failed her. That's what kept me there. What, you know, I was like, I'll do this forever, because that's what you know, I've always looked at having kids differently. Like, I've always said, hey, no matter what the circumstance or situation is, kids don't choose to be here. We make decisions, and we owe them. They don't owe us anything, you know, and that's how I felt with her. And I didn't realize that I would essentially end up getting temporary primary custody of my daughter while in Guam. So I had her.
Why was that? Was that you want it like that? I mean, obviously, I would want it that way, but
that's what
was it just, how did it land like that? Because usually it's hard to keep the baby with the father than the mother.
At that time, she wasn't she wasn't as mature and responsible as I was. She wanted to go out. She wanted to do these different things. She wanted to, you know, party and whatever. And I was always very, like I said, I took being a dad really seriously. And honestly, this time in my life is the one thing that I look back on. I'm like, dude, you went through being a single dad stationed in Guam with no support at 21 years old. Ain't nothing going to compare to that. Like, you could put me through a lot of things, but that was the hardest thing, like, ever.
Yeah, you're 20 years old.
Dude, I mean,
nobody's ever really taking care of you.
No.
You know what I mean?
I was like, yeah. I mean, dude, I'm regimented, brother. Like, I'm waking up at 5. I'm getting dressed. I got her clothes out. I'm getting her ready. I'm taking her to the daycare center on base. I'm going to the squadron. I'm then gonna, I leave the squadron by 5:15 to pick her up at 5:30. Because if I pick her up at 5:31, then they're gonna charge me an extra $20 per minute. Then I take her to, literally the schedule was boom, take her to the playground for 30 minutes, get her home, make dinner, do laundry, read her book, put her to bed, do the dishes, go to bed. Yeah. At 21 years old.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just like, that was my life. I mean,
wow.
And yeah, I mean, it took, like, literally, this is a time where I, like, got some sort of faith. Like, literally, I was just, like, feeling so freaking bad for myself, so miserable. She's doing, like, her mom was doing different things that kind of embarrassed me in different ways. Yeah. And I'm alone with my daughter. I have nothing as far as, like, like, support. And, obviously, you knew a little bit. Obviously, you guys know about, like, what I had come from as well. I'm like, dang, dude, how did I get so lucky, right?
Yeah.
Like, yeah. And, ended up, funny, not funny, but, the way I even discovered my faith was I had this issued Bible that I never had looked at because I didn't grow up with religion. I grew up with beliefs. And I was just crying one night and I said, in my head, I'm like, God, if there is a God, show me something right now, please show me something. And, ended up turning it to, Ephesians, the armor of God. Literally just randomly opened it up, read it. And it was exactly what I needed at that time, to be honest with you,
wow.
It was a really great passage, and, I've been a man of faith ever since, and I didn't have faith before that. But,
wow.
It was tough, man.
So what's the passage about?
It's essentially about being true to yourself, being okay with the deceiving forces or the evil ones, like, because you have the breastplate of truth, you have all these different things that are just keeping you firm in who you are, and there's going to be deceitful things going on. There's going to be things that hurt you. But as long as your faith is in the Lord, you are impenetrable. And as long as you are a good person, you are impenetrable.
And that was what you needed at that point.
Absolutely was what I needed at that point.
So what's your relationship today like with your daughter?
It's good. I actually after she was the main reason I got out of the service after my 6-year contract was up, was I knew I was in her best interest to be there for her, and as long as I was still in the service, no judge in this world would do that in deployable. So I did several deployments when I was in the service, but it can be a struggle. I have her a majority of the time. I care deeply for her. I've always wanted what's best for her. I still have dealt with different issues with her mother, different things like that.
But does she see her mom quite a bit now?
Usually it's every other weekend she goes over there, but it's one of those things where we can only do our best. Does that make sense? Like, I can only do what I can do, and it's not my place to at all impact what she thinks of her mother or anything like that. And that could be hard when...
That's a hard thing that's a high road to take.
It is when things aren't the same on, maybe they're not the same. And, it was,
and that's the age. There's the age, like at 11 years old, because, that you have to play that real, because here's the thing, in 2 to 3 to 5 years, it'll all come into focus the way it did for you.
Yep.
And then, right, wrong, or indifferent, it'll come into focus. But yeah, I feel you.
Went through a lot with that thing too, but it was, getting out, choosing to get out of the service was absolutely horrifying to me.
Why?
What do I have to fall back on?
You're a rescue swimmer, right?
I'm like,
lifeguards don't make a ton of money,
and that's, so it was like terrifying. And also, like, in the service, they like to convince you that there is no way to
survive outside of it.
Yeah, you're
transitioning out is a tough thing for a lot of people. Depression.
And I kind of skipped over. I did get to do multiple rescues. I did get to make a difference, man, and that was huge.
You saved some lives.
I did. And
what is that like? I mean, obviously you're doing a mission, and your job is to complete the mission, but to know that you save people's lives.
Yeah, it was amazing because, like, when you're training and you do all these things, they prepare you for the absolute worst thing that will never happen. So real quick, hey, the final in rescue swimmer school was essentially, hey, there's a ejected pilot and their plane went on to hit a sailboat and sunk the sailboat. There's 5 people in the water. Go, right? That's never going to happen. The ocean's a huge place, right?
Yeah.
And so from there, it was you practice over and over again, right? You have all these procedures down. Everything in the service is a step-by-step process, right? And I did quite a few searches before, because you search for anything, and we were the only search and rescue asset for Guam and all the Marianas Islands, so we were the only aerial search and rescue asset. And honestly, my first rescue was completely like an out-of-body experience. It was, I don't even have to think about what I'm doing because I have so much muscle memory and exactly these techniques, and it's almost like I'm watching myself do it. And when it was all done, it was just this feeling, man, of wow, everything that I went through to get here, and to have this privilege of making a difference for somebody, and to do that, it was just like this. It was just like this euphoria, to be honest with you. Like, I'm not saying that with any sort of like, and that's, it was such an amazing feeling. It was just.
Well, what was the call? Like, what? It was so there was the situation.
There was a fishing vessel that had been doing. They had said that they had been doing a swim call, and they had missed. They were missing 2 of their people on the ship, and you have to search around this area. And I was like, oh, that's weird, because the swim call is like 30 miles away from, or 20 miles away from Guam. And we're looking for a long time, and we end up finding these 2 guys. And one of them, I swear, I think he's, I thought he was gone because he was, he was actually prone floating. So you're supposed to do like head down, and then you lift your head up. So that's what you're supposed to do. But ended up going, they had been missing for over 10 hours, which that wasn't what the call said. So they already had, hypothermia kicking in completely, did not have any sort of blood flow going to their extremities, so they couldn't grab onto anything. Because what happens is when you're in anything that's lower than your normal body temperature, the blood flow goes to your main arteries, which are like your heart and your lung, so it protects those. So things like your hands and your feet, like, you lose the blood flow. And I went to the first guy, and it's funny because I had just gone through the divorce. I'm like, man, my first kiss after the divorce about to be this nice little Filipino man, like I was like, yeah. But then he lifted his head up and like, oh, thank goodness, man. Okay. And so rescued him and the other person. Well, and it was interesting because they both were wearing their normal clothes. They weren't wearing swimsuits. They were wearing their normal clothes. They both had they had their belongings like essentially saran wrapped. And this isn't a swim call. Yeah. So when we rescued them, the boat wanted us to bring these people back to their boat, and we're like, we have to bring them to the hospital. Well, it turns out that these dudes were thought that they were being hired on to be part of the crew, but they were essentially slave labor. And when they saw Guam off in the distance, they said, I'm going to try to make a swim for it because it looks way closer than what it is. And that's why they held off on calling it in. And it was just crazy because I was like, man, I thought it was like probably drugs, like it's saran wrapped. I was like, man, are they like trying? I was like, that's a long freaking swim to try to get some stuff out. But
they thought they could swim to Guam.
Oh, absolutely.
How far are we talking? Like miles?
At least 10 miles. Oh, at least 10 miles. I mean, it looked close, but it was at least 10 miles, and it was something else, man. And honestly, like probably had it been a few more hours, they wouldn't have.
They wouldn't have made it.
Yeah, no, they wouldn't have made it. And it was, it was just, it was just this thing of everything that I had everything that I had gone through led me to that point. It was, okay, I pushed through. I didn't quit. I was good enough. I know that sounds stupid, but it was like, yeah, they let me through, but maybe it was a fluke. And now I've saved a life. So
isn't it weird how that works? Yeah. Like you never want to give yourself the credit for the accomplishments, like a fluke. Like even when you say like, I had an out of body experience, it was just, my body was just kind of doing it, but it was you know, all those times. So you have had a completely remarkable, life. And so you get out, you have this really hard time transitioning into the real world. How did you end up getting into mortgage?
So I thought I wanted to be in law enforcement because it's like, obviously it's kind of the same, structured, all those good things. And I actually got pretty decently far in that hiring process. And I ended up running into a guy because at this point I was bartending. And I ran into this guy who was working for the sheriff's office, and he had previously been in the service for like 20 years. And he said, had I known it was going to be this miserable, I would have stayed in the service. And I was like, dang, maybe I shouldn't, you know, I was like, man, if it's even more miserable than that, I don't know. And I ended up running into these two folks who were, it was a man and woman, and it was a brother and sister-in-law. She was married to his brother, and they worked together in mortgage lending. And I got told if I pass my test, they'll give me a job. If I pass the test, they'll give me a job.
I remember you telling me this. I remember the story. This is an interesting story. Keep going. Because they don't remember it, but I do remember.
Oh, absolutely. So I met these people. I was actually pouring wine at this broker open for this new community, and they showed up, of course, and they ended up interviewing me, and they said, hey, if you pass the test, we'll give you a job. And so I was like, okay, well, that's way better than bartending. This sucks. Like, I feel like I've made the biggest mistake of my life getting out. I had interviewed also at a factory. Mm-hmm. Most depressed people ever offered me $12 an hour. Oh. And I'm like, did I really just go from doing what I was doing before to, you know, like struggling to get by working the graveyard shift? Like literally it would have been from, you know, like 6 to 6. I'm like, man, this is going to be horrible. And then I ended up going and I go to take the test, right? Dude, all I've done is gone through like this online class. I don't know anything. Like literally I called it 1003, the 1003. Oh, it's a 1003. You know, all these different regulations, all these things. Yes. And I had done a crap ton of the practice tests, and I will tell anybody whoever's like, oh man, what'd you get on that test? Dude, you have to get a 75, dude. I freaking hold my breath, hit submit, 76, bro. Yeah. And I'm like, dude, I got 100. Because when we call the doctor, yeah, you know what I'm saying?
No, you're using none of that information ever again.
I absolutely have never asked any of my doctors what their GPAs were. Never once have I been like, what was your GPA in college or in medical school? I don't care. Yeah, right? And
you made it, yeah.
And then that was like just this amazing thing, and started with them. They were great people to this day. I think the world of them. And at this point, I'm going through the custody battle. I'm starting, and I hire this lawyer, and lawyers are so freaking expensive. You know, they deserve it. They went through a lot of school. Some of them deserve it. Some of them don't. But I'm broke as crud, and I got this other loan officer who was highly successful who offered me a job. Mm-hmm. Well, I shut her down the first time. Second time, she texts me, right? Even better offer. Shut it down. I didn't even say nothing. The second time, I was like, yeah, okay, it was hard enough for you to turn it down. The first time, second time, I'm not even responding. Well, third time, she slide dials me, right? Leaves me a voicemail with this offer. I was like, dude, I can't say no. And I can't ask them to match this offer. That's not fair. Yeah. Well, end up accepting that and going to work for her as a loan officer assistant. So what I did was contract to close. That was the position. I was more of like a processor. I worked directly with the clients, did all those different things. And
great way to learn.
Oh, absolutely is. You know, learn everything about guidelines, overcoming obstacles. You know, and I was it was a high producing loan officer as well. And then fast forward, I was the kind of person where I worked really hard. I always thought my work would kind of speak for itself, but I wasn't the person who fell directly in line. Does that make sense? Like, was just like, oh, like I didn't just transparently, I learned how not to treat people from being on this person's team. Transparently, okay. I will never treat anybody like this. I mean, to this day, this person's team is a revolving door of people. She treats people like crud. But I had no room for growth. And I found out later on, so she had come to me with, hey, why don't you go out on your own as a loan officer and then, see what you could do. Well, it turns out that her hope was I would go out on my own as a loan officer and fail and come back with my tail between my legs and fall in line was essentially what she had hoped. But then started going. First year, did 2018 on my own. Dude, sucked, bro. I live in Prescott, Arizona. What I did was kind of like, hey, what Chris said, you have to be different. Yeah. I was like, okay, well, it's hard enough to break into a small town like Prescott. I'm not from there. I'm from here. I'm from Phoenix. Okay, can't break in. So what did I do? I called everybody who had open houses on the outskirts of Phoenix. So the towns that no one else would, like Apache Junction, dude, Santan Valley, Casa Grande, Florence, Buckeye. Back then, Buckeye is not what Buckeye is today. Yep. And then Anthem, and Anthem was like the nice one because it was kind of like, okay, this isn't too far from where I live. And I would just call, and the way I would do it is I would look at Zillow, and back then it was hard for agents to kind of, sometimes it wouldn't correspond directly to what the time was. Yeah. So it would say from like 11 p.m. to 2 a.m. on the Zillow thing for the open house. So I would call them, and I would say, hey, just want to let you know, it shows that you're doing an open house this weekend, and it says that it's going to be from 11 p.m. to 2 a.m. I don't think that that's right, and I would hate for people not to go to your open house because they don't see it. And they'd be like, oh my gosh, thank you so much. I'm going to get that updated. And then I would say, since I already added value to you, do you mind if I bring you coffee and we talk a little bit? Mm-hmm. So always had to, I was never the person who's just like, oh yeah, like I'm not going to have a try. I'm going to do something. I'm going to add value to you right away, something, right?
Yeah.
And so I did that. And so I got some things going. And it was tough, dude. It was tough.
The first year is always hard.
It was tough. And then that was doesn't compare to now, but that was like when interest rates went into like the 5s back, and that was kind of like a bigger deal back then. Like now we would do anything like, please Lord, give us 5s, right? But it was a little bit, it was definitely tough, and I was failing, and my wife had a high risk pregnancy, dude. So she couldn't work anymore. So she stopped working. I'm out on my own as a loan officer now. I'm a commission only. I'm struggling.
How were you feeling at the time? Like, what are you saying to yourself at that time?
Oh, dude, at that time, I was literally like so fake, bro. I was so fake. I tried to be what I saw like successful loan officers do, like, like wearing the button down, wearing the blazer, without trying to fit in and be like, have a stick in my butt. Like, kind of like what I thought. That's what I thought back then. I don't think,
yes,
kind of thinking now, but not too much. But it's, I was just fake, dude, and I was failing. So fake and failing. And I'm going, and I'm like, all right, dude, you know what? I need to do something because I have to support my family. So I enrolled in the Fire Academy in the evenings. So I'm going through the Fire Academy Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday evening from 6 to 10 in the evening, then all day Saturday. And I'm working as a loan officer all day. And as I'm going through this Fire Academy, I'm like, well, I know that anybody would hire me, man. I hate to say that with arrogance, but look at my background. Yeah. Right? Like, are you not going to hire me?
Yeah.
And so I had this confidence in me to be who I am. Yeah. I know it sounds so stupid, but it's just
that's a good point.
It's okay. I have this fallback. I hate to say that, but I had this thing, and I started just being myself. Hey, I'm going to be who I am. I'm going to call the people who I want to work with. Yeah. I'm going to talk to people the way that I am as a person. Like, I know my cred. I might give a cred. Like I always have said, like the secret to success, there's 2 things: work hard and give a crap. And then there's subcategories. And if you do those 2 things though, your business at some point will become successful. Yeah. Right. So weirdest thing, dude, start getting deals, man. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, hey, I got to go to the Fire Academy this evening, but you want me to take 2 applications? Are you serious? 2 of them? Yeah. So then things started falling together, and I go finish up the Fire Academy, and I'm starting to feel better about what I'm doing. You know what I mean? Like, not only just, oh, okay, I'm making money, because, it was, I'm who I am, dude. Like, I feel
now you're enjoying it.
Dude, now I'm having fun with it. Now it's like this little bit, almost like a game, right? Like, it's like, hey, I broke into my market because the front desk gal at the biggest brokerage in town was under contract, and 3 other lenders in town denied them, figured out how to do it. And that lady literally owe her like almost everything, because she told everybody. She's like, whoa, those 3 couldn't even do my loan. He figured it out. I'm like, dang, dude. Oh yeah, that's right. But it was this thing where it was just like kind of catapulted, and it was like, this kind of like hero or rescuer inside me. I'm like, yeah, I just rescued this deal. It was so fitting. It was like, to this day, I still talk to these people. They're great people. And it really helped me break into the market.
I love that.
In Prescott. But it's, it's funny because, like, dude, when I got to Gilbert, I went to a barber shop right down the street.
Yeah.
And it was interesting because the barber who cut my hair today literally said to me, he's like, he's 24. He says, like, I just want to, he says, like, he's been praying about how he can become successful and he doesn't know what to do. And I said, well, that's a great prayer, but what you should pray on is to find your passion and to be able to do your best thing with your passion. Because, dude, you know how it is, man. Like, how the accolades in our industry kind of work. Like, hey, there's those different, I'll call them like maybe they're pinnacles in the industry or different things. And all companies have their own little award system where they come with trips and things like that. And I used to think always, dude, I was like, okay, if I can make 6 figures one day, dude, I'm going to feel good about myself, bro. I'm going to feel good. At this point, I'm going to feel good. If I make $100,000, I will feel good. And then it happened, right?
And you're like,
oh, well, it must not have been that.
Yeah.
Now it's, okay, if I if I get to the point where I'm in President's Club, dude, I'm one of those dudes that are so cool, I'm going to feel good. Happen.
Yeah.
No. And then I want to make the top 1%. I'm going to feel good. Happen. Right. And honestly, it was like, the more I focused on this crap, like I'm going to call it crap because that's what it is. It doesn't mean anything. It does not mean absolutely anything, but I thought it did. The worse of a husband I was, because I was so focused on working and I was so accustomed to struggling that I didn't realize that I didn't have to struggle anymore. Like I was no longer struggling. It was like I literally went from this place of broke as crud, paycheck to paycheck, and I lived in that for 3 years, absolutely killing myself. All the while I hadn't been paycheck to paycheck for like a year and a half.
Yeah.
I'm going to work till 9 o'clock at night because that's what I had to do to make something happen.
Mm-hmm.
And it was interesting because it was like in my mind, I'm doing everything for my family, my wife and my kids, you know, like hey, I didn't get to share this. I did end up, you know, I met my wife. My wife's an amazing lady. Very, very best blessing I've ever had by far. But didn't realize that I was so afraid of going back to that struggle and letting her down. And like also with the relationship with money that I had shared, where it was, hey, money's a bad thing. And if you know, like if I don't make enough of it, my wife and I are going to argue. My kids are going to see what I saw. And it was all of that. And yes, it came from a good place, right? It did. It was like, okay, I want to do the best I can so my kids don't see it. But all the while I wasn't there, man. I wasn't around. I was working and it was like I was so afraid of going back to that I didn't realize that it would take a lot for me. Yeah. I would really have to like screw up a lot of things and buy some crazy vehicles for me to like go back to that. And it took, honestly, my wife and I were sitting down and I was upset. I was a little bit frustrated with her actually about like some of her spending habits that she'd gotten at that time. And she's amazing, obviously now, and we're on the same page, but I was frustrated. And she said, spending money is the only way for me to feel connected to you because it's the only thing that you bring to the house. Yeah. It's the only thing. And I like wanted to get mad, dude. I was like, oh dude, that hurt my feelings, bro. Yeah. Nothing. I couldn't say anything. Yeah. She was right.
Well, those are the moments in life that like wake you up. Right. Mm-hmm. I mean, you know, and now like, you know, for every story, every hero story, and I do believe you're a hero, a lot of times there's a guide, and I feel like in a lot of ways you had to become your own guide. You didn't have a lot of mentorship in life.
No.
And now you have, you know, you're surrounded with your kids and your wife, and you're getting guidance from that and keeping you on the up and up. But is there anybody in life right now that that mentors you that you could pick up the phone and call when you're stuck now?
Honestly, and I'm not saying this like, you know, I've had different coaches. I've had different things like that. One of the things that I really always want, man, is like, I really just want to be different. Like, I know that sounds like, it's just like, you know, like I've gone through the different coaching group and everybody likes to like replicate the same thing. And I'm like, okay, well, I'll see what everybody else is doing. I want to do something different. I think it's, I just truly want my team, my quote unquote success, I want it to just be mine. I know that sounds so
good. No,
that makes sense. So does that make sense at all?
I know
like
it really does. I mean, like there's independence in that. There's, you know, but don't negate the fact that like, you know, for me in life, like I've always wanted that one coach that can kind of be, you know, and I can't find them because they don't exist. I think that, you know, you have therapy for the things that you need for the mental struggle. You have emotional, you know, type of support, and then you got the business support, those sort of things. But I think there's different mentors throughout life that you could point to.
Oh, I do have two therapists who are great guys. Great guys. They're absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
No, and they're great. They're absolutely like, you know, I've gone through a lot of things and worked through so many things. And obviously I have no problem saying, hey, I've gone through therapy for multiple years, dude. And I'm going to probably end up going forever because the truth is this, our happiness is a choice that we get to make. And if there are things in life that can possibly help us feel happier and we choose not to do it, that's on you. You know, hey, I'm struggling. I'm feeling like I'm not enough. I'm feeling like I'm not doing enough, or my wife deserves better than me, or I'm like, you know, that saying, the wolf in sheep's clothing, like sometimes I feel like I'm a sheep in wolf's clothing, man.
Yes.
Like, you know what I'm saying? Like it's that imposter syndrome. It's I wasn't meant for this, or whatever it may be, or this wasn't meant for me. Or if I freaking blink wrong or step out of line, the universe is going to realize that I wasn't meant to have good things. Right. And I know it sounds stupid, but
no, I don't think it sounds stupid at all.
I've had amazing therapists, and I will, you know, obviously continue. And it's, and that's what I think is, as men, dude, like it's, and especially like, you know, with my background, like people don't talk about going to, you know, like therapy, or the fact that they struggle, or the fact that they, you know, that they've gone through different things or been hurt.
Yeah,
and I think
it's just that vulnerability.
And I think it's just so important, man. Like, it is just like so important that we show it and are more transparent, because even that barber literally said that he had to delete Instagram because he couldn't stop comparing himself and felt like he was behind in life to all these things that he had seen on social media. And I had to be like, dude, you know, that's all fake, bro. It's all fake, dude. Like,
but I do think that that's so true, man. I mean, like, but like there's, well, it may be fake. Well, it may be fake. I also think that, that's his way of putting the blinders on and saying it's okay to be you. Mm-hmm. You don't have to compare yourself, that sort of thing. I do think there's that self-management that we all have to have. I mean, there's a few people that I've had to like just mute, because I'm like, I don't know why I keep going back to this. I just got to mute this for a little bit, you know? Yep. And it's actually helpful for me, because it gets me back on track with what's important for me.
No, I completely agree, man. I literally, like, I have all these follow requests and friend requests from other loan officers in my area, and I choose not to accept them, not to be mean, because, like, there's that insecurity, dude. Oh, I know this agent I work with, like, all their stuff. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's not good, bro. Like,
so if you could figure out a way to manage that, that's you. And you know what? You get to control your feed, right? So,
absolutely.
You know, man, I can go on and on with you. In fact, I want to get you back here, because we can go on and on, but we are like actually well over our time. But no, you tell an amazing story, and I have to tell you, you know, for hearing it, I hope that you've been able to inspire somebody who needed to hear that, because, you know, when I come into this room to do a podcast, a lot of times, you know, where we think it's going to start, I used to come in with a page of notes. Mm-hmm. And I would say, you know, I would get through maybe one question, and I would just throw the notes away, because then the conversation would, you know, create a life of its own. And now I don't even come with the notes, because I'm like, we'll get through this, because, you know, you have a very interesting story. I know that you have done so much in life that you need to be proud of, because you've saved people's lives. You're an amazing father, amazing husband, and this is a constant, you know, evolution of who we are. And if we can continue to grow as people, then that's even better, right? And so, you know, even hearing, you know, the things that you've had to overcome even recently is big. So I got to thank you for making the drive up. I thank you so much for taking the time today. And where do people find you if they want to do business with you?
Smart Choice Lending Team. We're in downtown Prescott. On Instagram, Travis Smart Guild Mortgage on Facebook. And I would love to leave people with one more thing, and this is just something that's so important to me, and why I wanted to be here is, if you go through something bad in life and you never turn it into something good, it will forever be something bad. But if you can go through something bad in life and use it to help somebody else, it was worth it.
Drop the mic on that, man. That is powerful. Thank you.